The conference room on the 14th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over downtown Austin. And I used to love that view. I used to stand there in the mornings before anyone else arrived, holding my coffee with both hands, watching the city wake up below me. That was before the Tuesday in March when my husband stood at the head of that same table and read my name off a list like I was a line item he was cutting from a budget spreadsheet. My name is the last thing I expected to hear. I'd been at Apex Solutions for 9 years. 9 years of 70-hour weeks, of skipping my sister's birthday dinners because we had a client call, of taking my laptop on our honeymoon. Which, yes, I know, but we were in the middle of a product launch, and Spencer said it would only be for the first 2 days. It was for the whole week. But I didn't complain. I believed in what we were building. Spencer and I met at the company, actually. He was brought in as COO when I was already 3 years in, already managing the entire enterprise accounts division. I remember the first time I saw him. He walked into a strategy meeting 15 minutes late, poured himself coffee without apologizing, and proceeded to ask questions that showed he hadn't read a single page of the brief. I thought he was arrogant. I was right. I fell in love with him anyway. We got married 4 years ago in a barn outside Fredericksburg with string lights and wildflowers and a bluegrass band my mother-in-law hated. I thought it was perfect. Spencer cried during his vows. That's the version of him I half-acted myself existed, because the man who stood at the head of that conference table in March didn't look like someone capable of crying at anything. He'd been named CEO 8 months before. The board chose him over me. I found that out through my colleague Prentice, who heard it from someone in finance, which is how I found out most things that happened in my own company, in my own marriage, toward the end. When Spencer came home that night, I was already on the couch with a glass of wine, and he said the board felt his leadership profile was a stronger fit for where the company was going. He said it the way someone reads from a prepared statement. He didn't look at me when he's proud of him. I meant it. Mostly. We were a team. His success was our success. That's what I believed. I kept running enterprise accounts. I kept closing deals. In the 8 months between Spencer taking the CEO role and that Tuesday in March, my division brought in 63% of the company's total revenue. 63. I have the reports. I saved them, not because I thought I'd ever need them, but because I was proud. Because I'd built that number from 31% when I first took over the division, and every point of growth felt like something I'd grown myself, like something living. The meeting was called a strategic realignment session. That should have been my first warning. Corporate language that vague never means anything good. I walked in a few minutes early and took my usual seat, third from the left facing the windows. Prentice sat next to me. He raised his eyebrows when he saw the agenda printed on the table. Single sheet, no pre-reading materials. Another warning. Spencer came in last, which he always did now. He had started doing that after he became CEO, entering rooms last like he needed to be the final piece that completed the picture. He set his portfolio on the table and didn't look at me. That I noticed. In 9 years of working in the same building as this man, in 4 years of marriage, Spencer always looked at me when he walked into a room. It was one of those small things I'd stopped noticing until it was gone. He talked for a few minutes about quarterly projections, about the board's direction for the next fiscal year, about being proactive rather than reactive in our cost management. Then he clicked to the next slide. Project Streamline, he called it, a restructuring initiative. Certain roles would be redefined. Certain compensation structures would be adjusted to reflect current market benchmarks. Then he read the names. Mine was third on the list. I remember the exact quality of the silence after he said it. The air conditioning humming. Prentice going very still beside me. Someone across the table shifting in their chair. I kept my face completely neutral. Because I have spent 9 years in rooms where showing the wrong emotion at the wrong moment costs you everything, and some habits don't break even when your husband just cut your salary in a company meeting in front of 11 of your colleagues. Spencer moved on to the next bullet point. I picked up my pen. It was a Mont Blanc my father had given me when I made VP, dark green with my fingers. Then I set it down, gathered the single sheet agenda, folded it in half, and put it in the pocket of my blazer. Spencer stopped mid-sentence. I stood up. I'm going to step out, I said. My voice was completely calm. I was distantly amazed by this. I have some things to take care of. I walked out. I didn't look at him. I took the elevator down to the 8th floor, where my office was, and I sat at my desk for approximately 45 seconds before I understood what I was going to do. I called my sister first. She answered on the second ring because she always answers on the second ring, like she's waiting but doesn't want to seem eager. He put me on the pay cut list, I said, in front of the whole leadership team. There was a long pause. Then she said very quietly, "Okay, what do you need?" "That's my sister. That's always been my sister." I told her I needed her to not say anything yet, that I needed to think. She said okay and stayed on the line while I pulled up my email and started drafting. I wrote the resignation letter in 11 minutes. I've written a lot of documents in my life, proposals, presentations, account strategies that ran 40 pages, and that letter was the cleanest thing I'd ever written. 2 paragraphs. Professional. Effective. Immediately I sent it to HR and CC'd Spencer. Then, wasn't taking anything that wasn't mine. I want to be clear about that. My laptop stayed. The company files stayed. But the Mont Blanc was mine. The framed print my mother had given me was mine. The succulent on the windowsill that I'd kept alive for 3 years despite the terrible light. Mine. I had a canvas tote bag I kept in my bottom drawer for grocery runs, and I filled it methodically, going shelf by shelf. Prentice appeared in my doorway at some point. He looked at the tote bag and then at me. "What are you doing?" he said. "Leaving." He was quiet for a moment. "Can I help? Water the succulent for me until I come back for it." He nodded like that was a completely normal request, which is why Prentice has been my closest friend at work for 6 years. I took the elevator down to the lobby, nodded to the security guard whose name I'd learned was Dennis in my second year and had used ever since, and walked out into the March afternoon. The air smelled like rain was coming. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment with my tote bag and my resignation, and what I can only describe as an extraordinarily strange feeling of lightness, and then I called my lawyer. I'd had a lawyer, a real one, a sharp one, a woman named Catherine who had gone to UT Law, and had the energy of someone who found opposing counsel genuinely entertaining since the year I made VP. Spencer had thought that was excessive. "You work for a tech company," he'd said, "not a Fortune 500. I'd smiled and kept Catherine on retainer. She answered my call and listened to everything without interrupting, which is one of her best qualities. "The pay cut. Did you receive anything in writing?" she asked. "I have the slide from this morning's presentation. I have 11 colleagues who were in that room." "Good. And your employment agreement? The one from when you were made VP, the IP clauses, the non-solicitation?" "I know it by heart." "Of course you do." She was quiet for half a second. "The client relationships you've built over 9 years. Are those Apex-like relationships or yours?" This was the thing. This was the thing Spencer had never fully thought through, because Spencer was exceptional at strategy and genuinely poor at understanding the nature of trust. My enterprise clients, the companies whose contracts made up the majority of that 63%, had stayed at Apex because of me. Because of 9 years of calls and meetings and knowing when Marcus at Foreman Industries needed to hear good news versus hard news. And knowing that the CFO at Hargrove Group only trusted data he could verify himself, so I always came with 3 independent sources. And knowing that the relationship with my biggest account had survived 2 price increases and a service outage because they trusted me, specifically me, personally. Those relationships weren't in a contract. They were in 9 years of Tuesday check-ins and remembered birthdays and showing up when it mattered. "They're mine," I said. "Then let's be careful," Catherine said, "and let's be patient. Don't do anything yet. Let him come to you." 3 days. That's how long it took. I spent those 3 days at my sister's house in the hill country, sitting on her porch in the mornings watching the deer come through the oak trees, not answering Spencer's calls. He called 6 times the first day, 11 times the second. I know that sounds like a lot, but I'd watched this man not call me back for 4 hours, when I'd texted that I was in the ER with a kidney stone. So 11 calls felt more like math than sentiment. My sister made breakfast every morning and didn't ask me how I was doing, which was exactly right, because I wasn't ready to answer that. What I did instead was think. I thought about the accounts. I thought about the calls I hadn't yet made. I thought about a conversation I'd had 8 months ago with a woman named Solène, who ran business development at a competing firm called Meridian Group, and who had, over drinks at a conference in Denver, said to me in the most offhand way possible, "If you ever wanted to make a move, I would make a very strong case to our partners." I had smiled and deflected. I was married to the CEO. I wasn't going anywhere. Things change. On the morning of the 3rd day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail and listened immediately after. It was a man from HR, not anyone I'd dealt with regularly, someone from the executive side, saying that there were some important matters regarding my departure that required urgent clarification, and asking me to come in at my earliest convenience. I called Catherine. "He's panicking," she said, with a tone that suggested she had been waiting for exactly this. "What does he want? He wants to understand what you're going to do. He wants to know if the clients know yet. And he wants to believe there's still a version of this where everything holds together." "Is there?" A pause. "That depends on what you want." I thought about the conference room on the 14th floor, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the view I used to love, Spencer reading my name off a slide like it meant nothing, in front of 11 people, without so much as a conversation the night before. Set up the meeting, I said. I drove back into Austin that afternoon. I'd asked Catherine to come, and she met me in the lobby. She was wearing a gray blazer and had the expression of someone who had eaten opposing counsel for breakfast and was pleasantly full. Spencer was waiting in one of the smaller conference rooms, not the 14th floor one. Smart choice, actually. Less symbolic ammunition. He was there with the head of HR, a man I'll call by his title only, and 2 members of the board, 4 people to my one plus my lawyer. The room felt tight. Spencer looked tired. He'd always been the kind of tired that read as distinguished. Silver at his temples, permanent slight shadows under his eyes that made him look thoughtful. Today he just looked tired. "Thank you for coming in," he said. I sat down. Catherine sat beside me. I didn't say anything. He talked about the restructuring. He said the pay cut had been a board decision, not a personal one, which was the kind of thing that sounds like it should mean something and means nothing at all. He said my departure had created significant operational uncertainty. He said the clients had been calling. Which clients? I said. He named 3. They were not the 3 biggest. They were the 3 most panicked, which told me everything I needed to know about the order in which they'd noticed. The rest will follow, I said simply. He knew I was right. I could see it in the way his jaw moved. They made an offer. It was good. Technically a promotion in title, a significant salary increase. The head of HR pushed a single sheet across the table with the numbers on it. I looked at the sheet for a long time. Long enough that the silence became uncomfortable for everyone except Catherine, who was making a small note in the margin of her legal pad. Here is the thing about offers made in panic. They are not made from respect. They are made from fear. And I had spent 9 years, at a company I had helped build, and I had just watched my husband treat my contributions like a rounding error in front of our colleagues, without warning, without conversation, without the basic dignity of a private word first. No number on that sheet changed that. No title changed that. I appreciate this, I said, and I meant it to some degree because it confirmed what I needed to know about the position I was in, but I'm going to decline. Spencer's face did something I hadn't seen in a long time. Something cracked through it, just for a second. Hazel, this is a professional conversation, I said quietly. Let's keep it professional. Catherine added that we'd be in touch regarding the transition arrangements, which was her way of ending the meeting without anyone losing face, which was generous of her. We walked out together. In the elevator, she looked at me. Meridian, she said. Meridian, I said. I called Selene that same afternoon. She answered so quickly, I wondered if she'd been watching her phone. We talked for 40 minutes. By the end of the call, I had a meeting with her partners scheduled for the following week and a preliminary sense of what the offer would look like. It was, and I am not being immodest here, I am being accurate, more than Spencer had offered me that morning, with equity, with a real seat at the leadership table, with accounts I would bring and accounts I would build. The clients came with me. Not all of them. I was careful. I was lawful. I let them make their own choices. But most of them. Because 9 years of relationship isn't a thing that transfers on a spreadsheet. Marcus at Foreman called me 3 days after I joined Meridian to say he'd heard through the industry and wanted to know if his account would be coming with me. I told him that was his decision entirely and that I'd support whatever he chose. He laughed and said, I'll have the paperwork to your new address by Friday. It is now 5 months since that Tuesday in March. I run the Enterprise Accounts Division at Meridian Group. We are having, by most measures, an extraordinary quarter. My sister came down last weekend and we sat on my new back porch. I bought out Spencer's equity in the house in the settlement, because I'd paid half of it anyway, and drank wine and watched the sun go down over the greenbelt. She asked me, finally, how I was doing. The way she asked it meant the real version, not the professional version. I thought about it honestly. I think I'm good, I said. I think I forgot for a while that I didn't need his permission to know what I was worth. She was quiet for a moment. Then, she refilled my glass. There's something people don't tell you about walking away from something you built. They expect it to feel like loss, only loss, and it does. There are mornings I reach for my phone to text Prentice about something, and then remember we now work at different companies, and that stings in a specific low-grade way. There are moments I miss the view from the 14th floor. I am not going to pretend everything is clean and resolved, but there's something else too. Something that started small, like a sound you can't quite place, and has gotten louder every week since March. It sounds like knowing. Knowing that I walked out of that conference room under my own power, with my Mont Blanc in my pocket, and every door I've opened since then I've opened myself. Spencer sent me an email last month. It was 3 sentences. He said he understood, now that he had made mistakes. He said he hoped I was well. He said the company missed my contributions. I read it twice. Then I closed it. Some things don't need a reply. Some things answer themselves.